The third-floor hallway smelled faintly of coffee grounds and rain-damp carpet. The fluorescents had flickered out again, leaving the corridor in a kind of half-light. He was balancing a grocery bag on one arm and scrolling on his phone with the other when he noticed her. She was unlocking the apartment across from his, a glamorous silhouette against the dim hallway. Her coat was camel-colored, belted at the waist, the kind of fabric that whispered when it moved. A thin strand of hair had come loose and clung to her cheek, catching what little light there was. "Evening," he said, too casual, like he wasn't already watching her. She looked up, a pause before her eyes adjusted to the gloom. "Evening." Her voice was low but clear, touched with the faintest amusement. She turned back to the lock, keys chiming softly. He shifted the grocery bag, something clinking inside. "Light still out?" he asked, though he could see for himself. "They've been like this all day." She tested another key. "Management promised to fix it. They always do." He smiled, not sure if she could see it. Or maybe they like the mood lighting. That earned a quick breath of a laugh. She glanced at him then, the kind of glance that feels longer than it is. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Couple of months." He tried not to sound eager. "I'm in 3B. "I know," she said, as if she'd already filed him away. She slipped the correct key into the lock, but didn't turn it yet. Her fingers were gloved, slim, elegant. He cleared his throat. "I'm Leo." Another pause. "Anna." She spoke her name like it wasn't meant to be repeated, then finally turned the key. The door cracked open, warm light spilling out. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. The bag was growing heavy on his arm. He should go. Instead, he shifted closer to let someone pass. Only there was no one, just an excuse to shorten the distance. She smelled faintly of citrus and rain. "You must work late," he said. "Sometimes." She looked at him again, eyes unreadable in the half-light. "And you?" "I'm a student." "Well, sort of. I work too." He smiled, self-conscious. "I make everything complicated." Her mouth curved, a half-smile. "Maybe you just make it too simple." He laughed under his breath. "That's what my neighbor said." Then realized she was his neighbor. "I guess you did." Her gloved hand brushed the doorframe, then the strap of her bag. A tiny gesture, like she was weighing something. She stepped out of the apartment instead of in, closing the door behind her with a soft click. "Stairs or elevator?" she asked. "Stairs." He swallowed. "Always stairs." They walked side by side down the narrow flight. Their shoulders almost touched. His hand brushed the railing where hers had been a second before. Neither spoke. The sound of their steps and the faint buzz of the building filled the silence. At the ground floor, she stopped and adjusted her coat. He realized he'd been holding his breath. "I'll see you around, Leo," she said, voice light but distant. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. She walked past him toward the street door, the scent of her perfume trailing behind. For a heartbeat she glanced back over her shoulder, an unguarded smile, teasing, quick as a match struck. His heart kicked against his ribs as the door closed on the rainy night. The apartment smelled faintly of cardamom and fresh paint. Evening light leaked in through the tall window, making a warm stripe across the floorboards. Leo was kneeling by a half-opened box, trying to stack books without dropping them. Anna stood over him, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a loose strand of hair falling across her temple. "Those go on the lower shelf," she said, pointing with a pencil she'd been using to label things. "Otherwise the whole thing tips forward." "You're like an architect," he said, sliding another book in. "I would have just piled them. That's why your shelf at home tilts." She smiled without looking at him. He grinned, embarrassed that she noticed. "You've been spying?" "Observing." She crouched next to him, knees brushing the rug. "There's a difference." Her perfume shifted with the movement, something warm and citrusy under the smell of cardboard. He tried to focus on the titles in front of him, but kept catching her micro-expressions instead, the tiny frown when she concentrated, the quick press of her lips when she was about to tease him. "You keep pausing," she said quietly. "Do I?" He tried to laugh. "I'm just making sure the spines face the right way." "You're making sure I'm real," she said, and for a second her eyes flicked up, locking on his. Then she laughed, soft and self-correcting. "Forget it. I'm joking." He felt heat rise in his neck. "You're intimidating." "Good." Her hand shot out to steady a stack of books as it wobbled. In the motion her fingers brushed his. Not a deliberate touch, just a reflex, but her skin was warm even through the thin glove. She left her hand there a heartbeat too long before pulling back, tucking hair behind her ear as if nothing had happened. Leo's heart knocked once, twice. He pretended to focus on a book about Japanese gardens. "You're quiet now," she said. "I'm thinking. About. Nothing important." He set the book down too hard. The thud echoed. "You make it hard to think." Her mouth curved, but she didn't answer. She reached for another book, her sleeve brushing his forearm. The contact felt casual and not at all casual. He could smell her shampoo now, faintly herbal, like a memory of summer. He forced himself to stand, wiping his palms on his jeans. "That's the last of them." She stayed crouched, eyes on the shelf, but not reading. "You're quick," she said. "Faster than I expected." He wanted to leave, to break the pull, but his feet wouldn't move. Evening light dimmed to a copper glow, shadows stretching across the rug. She straightened slowly, setting the pencil down. "Leo." "Yeah." Her voice softened. "Stay a little longer." Rain hissed against the fire escape, a steady percussion on the metal rails. The apartment smelled of coffee and wet pavement. Leo stood in the open doorway, a mug warming his hands, steam fogging his glasses for a heartbeat. He'd meant to drop the mug off and leave, but now he just stood there. Anna was at the window, back to him, adjusting the heavy curtain so the draft wouldn't sneak in. Her coat was gone. She wore a simple gray sweater that softened her outline. The rainy light made the room dim and gold at the same time. "You're dripping on my floor," she said without turning. He glanced at his shoes. "Sorry." The word came out softer than he expected. He stayed where he was. She pulled the curtain a little tighter, then looked over her shoulder. "Coffee?" "Yeah." He lifted the mug like proof. "Thought you'd want one." "That's sweet." She let the fabric fall, wiping her hands on her jeans. A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "You keep doing these small things." "I don't know how else to be useful," he said, then instantly regretted how earnest it sounded. Her expression flickered. Something like warmth, something like warning. She crossed to the counter and picked up a second mug, poured from the pot. "You're more observant than you pretend." "I can't help it," he said. "You have these little habits." "Habits?" "Like the way you press your lips before you laugh." "Or how you—" He stopped, embarrassed. She turned, coffee in hand. "Go on." He stared into his mug. "Never mind." Anna walked back toward the window. As she passed him, their shoulders almost touched. He caught the scent of her shampoo again, damp and herbal. She reached for the curtain tieback and, without looking, handed him the other end. Their fingers brushed, warm skin on warm skin. Neither pulled away right away. Rain ticked harder against the glass. He opened his mouth to say something. Anything, but the sharp buzz of her phone cut through the moment. She flinched slightly, pulling her hand back. The phone buzzed. Again on the counter, screen flashing with a name he couldn't read from where he stood. "I should," she began, already moving toward it. "Yeah," he said, voice tight. He set his mug on the table, the ceramic clinking louder than necessary. He didn't want to see who it was, didn't want to know. She picked up the phone, turned away, murmuring something he couldn't catch. He watched the line of her back, the curve of her neck, the way her free hand gripped the countertop as if to steady herself. He stepped backward toward the hall, but stopped in the doorway. Rain blurred the window behind her. His own reflection hovered in the glass. Her voice was a low murmur into the phone. He knew he should leave. Instead, he lingered, heart thudding, the air between them charged, forbidden tension palpable in the narrow space. The room was dim except for a single lamp, casting a small pool of amber light across the rug. Rain still pattered on the window, a muffled rhythm under the soft hum of the radiator. They sat on the sofa, not quite touching, mugs cooling on the low table. The air smelled of coffee gone lukewarm and the faint perfume from her hair. Anna leaned back, one ankle tucked under her, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. Her nails clicked softly against the ceramic. "Sometimes," she said, "I wake up and feel like the walls are closing in. Like I built this whole life and then locked myself inside it." Leo turned his mug in his hands. "You seem," he searched for the word, "unshakable." "I'm not." She let out a quick, dry laugh. "That's the fear. That someone will find out." He watched the tiny movement of her thumb rubbing against the mug handle. "Find out what?" "That I don't know what I'm doing either." She set the mug down a little too hard. "That I'm scared of being alone, but scared of being seen, too." He stared at the surface of his coffee, at the faint ripple his own breathing made. He wanted to tell her that he'd noticed her pauses, her glances, the way she saw him. Sometimes touched her necklace like it was a talisman. Instead, he said, "I think everyone's scared of that. Even you?" She asked, looking at him now. He met her eyes. "Especially me." Her lips parted as if to say something, but she only inhaled slowly. The lamplight drew soft gold along the line of her cheekbone. He felt the sofa's cushion dip slightly toward her side, as if gravity were making its own argument. "I shouldn't be saying this," she murmured, eyes still on him. "I'm old enough to know better." He almost said "you're beautiful," but caught it at the last second. Instead, he said, "You don't have to be perfect." She tilted her head. "Neither do you." He shifted closer without meaning to, knee brushing the edge of her leg. His fingers tightened on the mug, hers pressed against her thigh, a white-knuckle grip. Every small movement felt amplified, the brush of fabric, the sound of rain, the air between them thickening. He began, then stopped. His pulse was in his throat. She waited, eyes searching his face. "You what?" He looked at her hand on her thigh, the slight tremor of it, then back to her eyes. He swallowed. "Nothing." The silence stretched. She didn't look away. He could hear her breathing, shallow and quick, could feel the heat of her presence like a second lamp. They sat there, unmoving, an unbroken stare between them, silence heavy with anticipation. The rain had stopped sometime after midnight, leaving the city hushed. Anna's apartment smelled faintly of damp wool and the last of the coffee. Leo was alone in the living room for a moment, crouched by a stack of books they'd never finished shelving. A small wooden box sat half open on the bottom shelf. Inside, tucked between yellowed receipts, was a photograph. He hesitated, then slid it free. It was her, younger, hair looser, eyes softer. She stood in sunlight with someone's arm around her shoulders, both laughing at something out of frame. The photo edges were frayed, as if it had been thumbed 100 times. He didn't hear her come back until her voice cut through the quiet. "Where did you get that?" He spun, guilty. "I'm sorry. It was just sitting there." She crossed the room quickly, not angry, but something like alarm flickering in her eyes. She stopped a step away, looking down at the picture in his hand. Her fingers twitched like she might snatch it, but didn't. "That was a long time ago," she said finally. He swallowed. "You look happy." "I was," she said, voice low. "He left. Or I left. Depending on who tells the story." Leo studied the photo again. Then her face now, the small muscles working in her jaw, the way she kept her hands folded tight against herself. "I'm sorry," he said. "You don't have to be." She took a breath that caught halfway. "It's not your apology to give." Silence pooled between them. He could hear the faint drip of water from the fire escape outside. "I don't usually let people see that," she murmured. "I keep it buried because it still stings." He looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes were shiny in the lamplight, but she wasn't crying. "You don't have to hide it from me," he said softly. Her lips pressed together, then parted as if to answer. "You're young. You don't know how much it costs to start over." He took a small step closer, still holding the photo. "Maybe not. But I know what it's like to be scared you'll never feel something this intense again." Her breath trembled. "Leo." He held the photo out to her. She didn't take it. His fingers brushed hers anyway, a feather-like contact. "I don't want to lose this moment," he whispered. The words escaped before he could think. She looked at him then, unguarded, like the photograph, the same softness, but rawer. Her hand hovered near his, not quite touching. Neither moved. The apartment felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the room itself were holding its breath. They stood like that, both frozen, eyes locked, stripped of their usual masks, two people caught in a single, trembling, emotionally vulnerable pause. The balcony rails were cool under Leo's palms. Far below, traffic hissed like a distant tide, red and white lights blurring against the wet asphalt. Above them the sky was a deep violet, a few scattered clouds glowing faintly from the city's neon. The smell of rain still hung in the air, metallic and green. Anna stepped out behind him, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. Her hair caught the glow of a street lamp, a faint halo against the night. She closed the sliding door with a soft click, sealing them off from the apartment's warm hum. "You'll get cold," she said. "I'm fine," he murmured, staring at the skyline. His fingers tightened around the railing, knuckles pale. "I like the air." She stood a half step to his side, her own hands sliding into her sleeves. You've been quiet all night. He exhaled a shaky laugh. Trying to be. Trying. Yeah. He turned slightly toward her, eyes catching the reflection of the city lights. Because if I start talking, I might say something I can't take back. She tilted her head, brow furrowing just enough to show she was listening. Like what? He swallowed. The pulse in his neck was a drum. Like how I can't stop thinking about you. Her breath caught, audible even over the hiss of traffic. She blinked once, slowly, then looked away toward the skyline. Her fingers came up to her lips as if to hide a tremor. You shouldn't say that, she whispered. I know. He gave a short, rueful smile. I tried not to. The city seemed to hush for a moment, the only sound the faint clatter of a train somewhere in the distance. She traced an invisible pattern on the railing with one fingertip, eyes fixed on the dark glass tower across the street. She began, then stopped. Leo, you're too. She shook her head, a small, helpless laugh escaping. Too much. Maybe, he said. But it's true. He reached out, not to touch her BU. To rest his hand near hers on the railing. The distance between their fingers was the width of a coin. His thumb flexed once, then stilled. She glanced at his hand, then at his face. Her lips parted, but no words came. He saw her shoulders rise and fall with a deep, slow breath. Tell me to leave, he said softly. If you want me to. She didn't. The streetlight flickered once, throwing their shadows long across the balcony tiles. Anna shifted, cardigan slipping slightly off one shoulder. She turned toward him just enough that he could see the catch in her throat, the uncertainty in her eyes. For a long heartbeat neither spoke, the night holding them like glass. Then she leaned the smallest fraction closer. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just a tilt into the gravity between them. And the moment hung suspended, intimate and trembling, with the city lights glittering below. Morning light spilled through the gauzy curtains, not the harsh white of noon but the pale blush of early day, softening every edge in the apartment. The city noise was still muted. Only a few cars rolled past below, their sound a distant hush. The air smelled of coffee and rain gone dry. Anna sat at the small kitchen table, palms wrapped around a cooling mug. Her hair was loose, a little messy in a way he had never seen before. Leo stood by the counter, staring at the steam rising from the kettle though it had already stopped whistling. They hadn't said much since sunrise. He rubbed the back of his neck. I should get going, he said, though he hadn't moved. She traced a finger along the rim of her mug, the same motion she'd made the night before on the balcony's railing. You probably should. Her voice was quiet, but even. He turned, leaning on the counter. The pastel light caught the lines at the corners of her eyes, made them gentler. Last night. I know. She set the mug down, looking at him at last. Some lines aren't meant to be crossed, she said softly. But sometimes, they already are. Leo inhaled through his nose, a small, shaky sound. He thought of the photograph in the wooden box, of her confession on the sofa, of the electric pause on the balcony. All of it still buzzing in the air between them. I didn't plan any of this, he murmured. Neither did I. She gave a short, almost embarrassed laugh. But life isn't neat. He moved a little closer, then stopped. Do you regret it? Her thumb worried the handle of her mug. Ask me again in a week, she said. Maybe I'll know. A gull's cry drifted up from the street. He wanted to reach out, to take her hand across the table, but his own stayed planted on the counter. You're quiet, she said. I'm trying to decide whether to say goodbye or stay. She looked down at her mug, then back up. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held his for a long time. Sometimes, she whispered, the hardest thing is leaving before you ruin the good parts. He nodded, a faint tremor in his jaw. He took a half step back toward the doorway, then paused. The pastel light brightened, painting both of them in a soft glow, two outlines caught between choices. He swallowed. Would you have walked away? His voice caught, then steadied, or stayed? She didn't answer. The question floated in the quiet kitchen like steam, curling upward and dissolving into the morning. Final takeaway. Love and connection are not perfect or immediate. They require risk, honesty, and the courage to step beyond fear. Even fleeting brushes, whispered words, and fragile moments can leave an indelible mark. Did you enjoy this story? What kinds of emotionally charged, slow-burn stories would you like to hear next?